Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Alright, so I'm not the biggest fan of the first two prequel movies. You saw my reviews for them. The first one is really boring and underwhelming and not very interesting. The second one is really painful and annoying and obnoxious and stupid. This movie, Revenge of the Sith, I kinda like it. Kinda. I don't think it's a very good movie, but it's okay for me. There are things about it I like, but there are also a bunch of things I don't. So let's get into this movie. First off, the opening scene is awesome. Like, the opening action scene through space, that is awesome. That is, like, that encapsulates what the prequel trilogy should have been. Like, Star Wars only in the new generation. But, I guess that's what the sequel trilogy with episodes 7, 8, and 9 are gonna do. Hopefully. JJ, you can't mess up. I know you can't. But whatever. Now, that is pretty cool. The acting is better. It's the best of the prequels, but it's still not amazing. There's still a lot of stilted, Anakin, you are my brother! But, not really. Hayden Christensen is best in this one. I still don't think he's very good, but this is his best. And I certainly buy the fact that he is Darth Vader more in this movie than he was in Attack the Clones. I buy dialogue like, I can't really remember all of it, but I buy him more in this movie. Like, he in this one kind of looks like, when you look at him, when he's just got no dialogue, he's just staring at the camera like, that to me is a young Darth Vader. That works. Natalie Portman as Padme, she's better in this one. She doesn't really do, actually, she might have been better in Attack of the Clones because she does stuff. She does pretty much nothing in this movie, honestly. She's just there. She's there to tell Anakin, "Hey Annie, I'm pregnant." yeah, this is the movie where Anakin becomes Darth Vader and turns to the dark side, and Padme gets pregnant with Luke and Leia. The New Hope. Star Wars humor. And, I actually think this is not that bad of a chapter and serve story, because I'll say this right now. I actually did find the story in this movie better and a little more enjoyable. Mainly the beginning and end of the movie. The middle part was kinda Like, Anakin's turn to the dark side felt really rushed and kinda unnatural and unrealistic. Like, I don't know, it just felt like he turned on a dime and he was kind of duped by the Emperor, who's Palpatine. Big shock there. Yeah, it just kind of seemed odd. You can kind of buy Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship in this one more so when Obi-Wan in A New Hope says he was a good friend. I believe it if you showed me Revenge of the Sith. If you only showed me Attack of the Clones, I'd be like, no, they weren't friends, they hated each other. And this one, I believe it more. And in the ending, when, they have to fight in their awesome lightsaber duel, it is kind of sad seeing these two friends, like, just, torn apart like that. Because ultimately, I find the reason Anakin turns to the dark side kind of dumb, because he's kind of just duped by the Emperor into a lie. It's not even true. It just feels ridiculous, and I'm not a fan of that. But, I find enjoyment in this movie. Like, I'm not a fan of, once again, the pseudo-political dialogue that's there and in it. But, the battling in this movie with the lightsabers, it's pretty awesome, I'm not gonna lie. Like, the ending lightsaber duel, it goes on between, like, Obi-Wan and Anakin. There's also one between Yoda and the Emperor. Again, I don't like Yoda using a lightsaber, but they were pretty cool fights. They went on a little too long, but they were still cool to look at, And once again, they're a little too well choreographed. But I find that they're really fast-paced, a lot more than the Darth Maul fight and the Count Dooku fight. So, it was pretty cool. And, once again, the opening action scene was really awesome. I really liked that. And, Anakin's character, like I said earlier, he's actually a character I kinda care about in this movie. He's a little better, but I still am not the biggest fan of him. But at least, this movie kind of redeemed him from Attack of the Clones a little bit. Not really. But, at least it was much more bearable in this one. Obi-Wan is still alright, Mace Windu, Samuel L. Jackson, kind of unnecessary. But, I live with it. I don't really care. Because, again, there's enjoyment in this movie, as I had. There's some really good action. And the story is a little better. And, the terrible love dialogue from the last movie is pretty much all gone. Except for this one instance where they're, like, on the roof. And, like, it's the worst. It's the worst dialogue in the movie. Like Anakin to Padme is like, "You're so beautiful." Maybe it's just because I'm so in love. No, because I'm so in love with you. That's horrible dialogue, honestly. But you know, there's enjoyment in this movie, and again, as long as the movie's enjoyable, I will have fun with it. And not all the movie's enjoyable, but I really did actually legit like the ending to this movie because it really tied up everything really well with the New Hope and the original trilogy. I think that was really well done. You know, they didn't have to force in a 10-year-old Han Solo in this movie. I'm glad they didn't do that. You know, they shoehorned Chewbacca in for some reason. He doesn't really do anything. But, you know, Chewbacca's there for some reason. Whatever. You know. And, you know, you see Darth Vader and stuff. And, you know, Anakin becomes Darth Vader. It's cool, I guess. But, you know, he's still Anakin. The prequels Anakin, who we're not a big fan of. But at least he's a little better in this one than he was in Attack of the Clones. Which, again, I'll say, if you can be a better character than Attack of the Clones Anakin, you can be good, because Attack of the Clones Anakin was the worst thing ever. You know. But again, this movie was, for the most part, pretty well done. Like, I think the Emperor is a pretty good villain, and, you know, he's kind of dupes Anakin. Anakin is kind of dumb a little bit for believing him and trying to dark side a little bit in this one, but, you know, again, there is a good fight scene at the end between him and Obi-Wan, and it's pretty emotional at the end, you know. Even if I don't care for these characters as much as the original trilogy's cast, I still kind of do feel bad for, like, what happens and stuff, and, you know, the whole tragedy between Anakin and Padme. They have a little more chemistry in this one, that earlier line I said aside. I can kind of believe the romance a little bit more in this one. Like, it's not as forced and in-your-face as Attack of the Clones was. It's kind of just there, and, you know, I kind of feel bad for them at the end. But, you know, eventually it kind of happens in the two. Doesn't work out. And, you know, Luke and Leia are born in this one because Padme is pregnant, and, yeah, they're separated, you know, given to where they need to go, so eventually in about 17 years, A New Hope can happen. And that's a great movie, and, you know, if there's one thing about the prequel trilogy I'm thankful for, is that it exists. Like, as much as the execution of this was awful, I'm glad it exists to tell the story of Anakin. Like, even if it's not exactly a very good execution of it, the fact that, you know, it exists and it tells us about Anakin and stuff, I'm glad it does that, because Anakin, you know, I would love to hear the story about Darth Vader. Like, I can kind of ignore Attack of the Clones, because Attack of the Clones really isn't that important to Anakin's character development. It's actually, I mean, I don't really find his relationship with Padme, like, all that necessary. I mean, yeah, it's gonna happen so Luke can exist, Luke and Leia can exist, but, you know, kind of, Phantom Menace is kind of the same, I don't know. It just felt like kind of an unnecessary chapter, but, guess you had to start somewhere. I feel like Revenge of the Sith, if you have to watch any prequel movie, it's Revenge of the Sith. Like, because this one, they could have just made this the Star Wars prequel and not have the other ones. Like, because I feel this is the most important chapter of the prequels, and it shows because it's actually the best of the prequels, definitely. It's definitely the best of the prequels, and it's an okay movie. I don't feel it's amazing or as good as the original trilogy, but this one, if you had me to a gun point to my head and said, pick a prequel, I'd say Revenge of the Sith, because Revenge of the Sith, it's the most enjoyable to watch, it's got the best scenes, it's, you know, the best acted, and it has the least awful lines and stuff. The CG is actually really good in this one. There's still too much of it, but it's actually good CGI compared to Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, which is kind of just and they kind of look dated because of that. And this one, it's good. I do kind of like Revenge of the Sith. I don't think it's amazing. It definitely pales in comparison to the original trilogy, but it's definitely a movie. Sorry for the cuts, but I need to give my rating. Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, gets from me a 75%. Better than the other prequels, yes. But it's not that great, you know, compared to the original trilogy, which are easily in the high 90s. This one, I'll definitely give it some slack for some bad thing it does, but I appreciate that it's actually a refreshing, good change of pace for the prequels. You know, George Lucas, he still kind of messed up with the first two. This one, but still, I'm glad it exists just to tell the best part of the prequel story, and, you know, for all the reasons I said prior. But thank you all for watching. And if you enjoyed this, you know, do the stuff you do if you like this, because you probably know. Adios, home slices.